Please. Hi.
Hey, Toby.
My dad.
My son.
Am I? Yes, I am.
Think so.
You are the son of the dad.
No. I'm somebody else's son.
You're somebody else's son. You look like a son. Okay, let's get right into it. You grew up in a very big family.
Oh, yeah.
With about 10.
Well, first 9 and then 10
10,
my
so-
parents adopted another one years after the last one.
So, how was that growing up in such a big family?
Well, pretty busy, adventurous. We were a lot by ourselves outside because, when you have 9 kids as a parent, you don't have the time or the resources to take care of them all the time. So we went on adventures to the beach, to the seaside, in the woods, fell out of trees and stuff, never told our parents. So this kind of thing.
Ah, that explains a lot. You fell on your head a lot. So.
Yes. Last year, I went to the hairdresser and asked him to shave my head completely in order to see all the bruises that I have on my head. And there's even a hole or something. So I've got a lot of bruises on my head. I fell on my head a lot and I fell out of trees and this kind of stuff happened all the time.
Well, you ended up still quite
More or less, I can pretend to be normal. Yeah.
Okay, so then when did you get interested in music?
I think I've always been interested in music as far as I can remember, actually. As a kid, we all went to a Catholic school, so we had to sing these psalms all day long. In a way, that was my first contact with music because I remember as a little kid, maybe I was 3-4 years old, and maybe 5 or 6, I don't remember. I remember after school riding around on the school's playground on my little bicycle and singing the hymns because I was so touched by the music. I was so moved by the music. It went very deep, and I've always been like that. Music goes like straight to my heart. So this was, I think, my first contact with music. Also, my mother sang all day long while doing the dishes or doing whatever, and she was always singing. So I learned a lot of old Flemish songs from her.
We must answer yes or no. Oh, no, don't know.
So these two elements were my musical feeding ground, let's say. The psalms at school and then my mother singing.
And then when did you really start studying?
Very late. My older brother got a guitar for his birthday, maybe his 10th or 12th birthday or something. A very, very bad guitar with the strings this high above the fingerboard. A very cheap guitar. It was more a toy than a guitar. So he was into guitars and stuff because that was the time when the Beatles became famous and, we had Beatles music all the time. When you walk down the street, you have the latest Beatles hit blasting from the windows everywhere. Nowadays, everybody's on his smartphone and with the earphones, but back then, people opened windows and you had this music everywhere you went. You had the latest Beatles hit or Rolling Stones or whatever. He was very much into pop music, and actually because of his example and trying to play the guitar, I got into that as well. But I switched very quickly to the bass because I've always been very much attracted to low sounds, the bass sounds. When I listen to records as well, the first thing I hear is the bass line. The rest is optional, let's say.
Which is weird because normally people don't really hear the bass.
Yeah, that's true.
People only hear the bass when it's gone. That is like something's missing, but they don't know what it is.
There's no music without the bass.
So what bands or artists inspired you back then?
Well, of course, the Beatles. And then actually back then, when I was a little kid, we were quite poor. We were a poor family, actually. Although poor is relative. We had enough to eat, so I guess we shouldn't complain. But we had a record player, and I remember in the beginning we had 3 LPs. That's all we had. I think we had one with Bach, and then the second one, I think, might have been Nat King Cole, whom I still love very much. He's a fantastic singer. And probably the Adams Singers, which is kind of a men's choir, who sang these standards like My Bonnie is Over the Ocean, this kind of stuff. And then later on, we got into the Beatles albums. My parents were big Beatles fans, so we got every new Beatles album. And then later on, we got these, I remember one Mary Poppins LP with all the hits from the Mary Poppins film. And this kind, it was very eclectic. And then later on, my parents got into French singers like Georges Brassens, who was a big influence for me and for my brother as well, and Guy Béard and these people. So it was a pretty eclectic mix of classical music and Beatles and French music. And just like the library we had at home, it wasn't really a library, it was a collection of books, but it was very diverse genres and languages, French, Dutch, German, English books. As long as I can remember, we always had books and very different styles and a very eclectic collection of books and music.
Then after that you started your own band.
Yes. When I was 13 or 14, I got my first bass guitar, which is an Italian Wonder bass guitar.
I tried to find that brand. It's impossible to find. I don't know anything about it.
Well, it's called Miracle Wonder. It was a nice bass, but I didn't like the color all that much. And I traded it for a Fender Music Master at the shop. My father had to pay just a little bit extra, and I got my blue Fender Music Master, which I had for a long time. And so I started a band with some friends from school. That was my first band. We came up with a very silly name. It was the Mixed Green Color Band. And that was my first band. We played quite a lot. We played at the school, what do you call that? School feast, school celebration.
School celebration, like open school day or something like
so
that.
that was our first gig. And from then on, 13, 14 years until around 20, I must have played in around 20 different bands. Some of them quite good, some of them so-so. But it was great fun to play pop music.
Cover bands and also original.
Cover bands and original songs. We started with covers of like every band back then. CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival. I think we played not all of the songs, but many songs of CCR. I was a singer as well because they were all too timid to sing. I couldn't really sing, but well, I had a go at it, and so I was a singer and bass player.
Playing bass and singing at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing.
It's not easy, but I played very simple stuff.
Well, Creedence Clearwater Revival. It's simple and not simple at the same time.
Yeah.
It's simple chords, but it's not easy to sing and play.
One of the nicest bass lines back then was "Won't Stop the Rain." It's a simple bass line, but it moves around a bit. And again, it was very moving for me. It moves, but it moved me. It's the bass line is something a little bit more.
Yeah, like a melody.
It's like a counter melody.
Happened a lot in the Beatles after.
Yes. Paul McCartney was a master creating counter melodies. So that's always been my fascination with the bass, that the bass does something unexpected. Like Paul McCartney famously said, it's not a G chord until I play a G, something along those lines.
Along those lines. Yeah, for sure. I know that with one of the later bands, they almost got famous once more, right?
Once More, the band was called Once More.
Yeah.
They changed to Lunar Twist, which was a strange twist. But yeah, in Belgium we were famous. They won what they call the Rock Rally. They were the winners of probably the first edition of the Rock Rally. And I joined the band a couple of months after they won the prize, and then they went down.
That's not true. You guys recorded some singles.
We made some recordings. It was a pretty good band with a great singer, a great guitarist, and a fantastic drummer who I'd known before. What's his name? Lamotte. I'd like to meet him again. So we had a really good chemistry, which is always very important.
Bass and drums.
The bass and the drums, that you really understand each other, you play off each other. It lasted only 2 months for me because I was my last band and I decided to give up pop music.
There's a funny story about that band. The single you guys recorded, it's you.
I'm playing.
Playing, but
then I quit the band and they put the new bass player on the cover, which at that moment was a bit upsetting for me. Now I wouldn't care.
I have the single, and I think you crossed out the bass player. You said me or
something like that. Yeah. That's when you're young, I wouldn't care now.
I like it. I like the song, both of them.
Yeah.
Town, we're all feeling fine. We're all feeling great. All right, we're just unemployed. We've got nothing else to do but hanging around across the boulevard. Zigzaggy walking across the street. Zigzaggy walking across the street. Zigzaggy walking across the street. Zigzaggy walking ain't that kind.
But it was a fun time, and it was actually a real professional band with a professional attitude, and I liked that very much because they were serious about it. They were ambitious and they were serious, and they worked out the guitar parts with 2 guitar parts,
Not playing the same.
Not exactly like you have in some bands, like what was it, Allman Brothers or the Doobie Brothers, some brothers. I had these parallel solo lines, which I liked very much, and they did that really, really well. And a great stage presence. The singer Alain Dunn, a great presence on stage, I love playing with them. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I remember seeing the pictures of you playing in those bands. I was very excited, and envy is a big word, but I think I would have loved to live back in those days because pop and rock music was, I think, for me, different than it is now. What is your look on that?
Completely different, and it was, for me, of course, I'm talking like an old man now. Everything was better before, which actually is true. Everything was better before. But in music, there was a lot more adventure. There was no standard way or everybody imitating everybody else. Every group, every band, every singer had his or her own personality, own style. I was looking for a new challenge or for a new sound, and it was just an amazing period in pop music because you had all these different characters, these different bands, and nothing sounded like another band. They all had their own. And then, of course, as soon as the money comes into play, then you have to repeat the success, or you have to
repeat
imitate
what they know that's going to bring success.
It's going to bring in the money, so you have to do the same. And another thing that brings to mind is that technology was more primitive than it is now. Musicians got electrocuted on stage. I mean, you can't imagine that now. I got some shocks from the microphone, still alive, luckily. But I mean, technology was very primitive, which means that also, for instance, now everything is done with a click track. It doesn't move. To me, it's kind of dead. I like music that goes in and out of the groove and changes a bit, and it speeds up and it slows down. And I like that. It's more alive. It's like this interview. We're speaking, and you hesitate and you think. This is organic. And if you have this made by AI, it's going to be less natural. Let's say this was the great strength of music back then. It was far from being technically perfect, but it was really, for me, a lot more interesting and more moving, more touching to have this human aspect, which is now a bit replaced by a machine aspect or a drum computer or whatever. This kind of technologically advanced period, and before it was more organic, I think.
And also to learn, because I remember you said you had to
Oh yes. If you wanted to learn,
back.
I wanted to learn a bass part, I had to lift up the needle, put it in a groove before, listen again, until I got it. Yeah.
Not like now. Now you basically.
Or you can filter out the bass part. You can slow it down.
You can do whatever.
You can do anything you
want.
want.
So after that last band, you suddenly decided to go into classical music, sell all your basses, all your amps.
Yeah, I sold everything. Yeah.
How did that revelation?
Probably it wasn't that sudden. It had been on my mind for a while because I started playing classical double bass at around 17 or 18. Because I was already in bass guitar, so I was already obsessed with bass sounds. And at one moment, my parents brought back a second-hand double bass from a trip. They had seen a bass somewhere in an antique shop, and they loved it so much, and they bought it and they had it sent over with a truck in a wooden case. And actually, remember, the wooden case cost more than the bass, so they sent the case back, and they kept the bass, which was actually quite a decent double bass, and it was just standing in the corner for a while until I figured, well, I play the bass guitar. How hard can it be to play the double bass? And the tuning is the same. So, and that's what started me, and I went to music academy, have some lessons with a cello teacher who didn't know anything about the bass. But anyway, that was a kind of a turnaround for me, that this instrument might be my destiny. This was something that really, maybe because of the physicality of the thing, it's big and it resonates against your body, and you really feel what you're playing. You don't just hear it, you feel it. So I had been dabbling in double bass for 1 or 2 years when I was in this last band, and also I was in university back then studying Germanic languages, and I was kind of at the crossroads. What am I going to do? Am I going to follow the path of music, or am I going to aim for this linguistic stuff and try to become a teacher? Because actually that was my big ambition. I wanted to be a school teacher, because I had some wonderful school teachers, not that many, but 2 or 3, who really inspired me. And at a certain age, when you're 16, 17, you need this kind of figure you look up to, kind of, let's say, a guru. Now I wouldn't touch a guru with a
real guru.
with a pole, but I mean, at a certain age you need some, and I had such teachers in my life, and I was very inspired to become a teacher as well, because I knew how important it can be for a young man or a young woman, a girl or a boy, to have this figure that you can look up to and who is an inspiration to you. So that was actually my big ambition. So I was at this crossroads because I was getting into music a lot and loving it very much, and I had to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to do this teacher stuff, or am I going to try and be a musician? And I talked to my father about it, and I'll always be grateful to him, because he gave me the chance. He said, okay, I'll give you this chance. You quit university, you go for music, but that's the last chance I'm giving you. So you can choose, you make a choice, I'll support you in your choice, but don't come back in 2 years and say, I want to do something else. So I chose for music, and I just gave up the pop music. I went really 200% for classical music, and that's what I did the rest of my life. Yeah.
Coming from pop music, did it help while studying in classical music or not?
It helped a lot. I always say that everything for me that matters in music, I learned back in the day when I played pop music. All the important things things I learned from playing pop music. So I don't think rock and pop is inferior to classical music in any way. I learned so much from playing pop music, especially feeling each other, playing together, looking at each other, because you have no score in front of you. In classical music, it's often the system is you have your score and you look at your score and you play exactly what's in the score. And very often I find that in classical music, they do that very well, but they don't listen to each other. They're playing their part and they play really well, but there's no communication. And I always miss that very much in classical music. Of course, a lot of classical musicians do that, but a lot of them don't. So these essential things I learned from playing pop music, to really be together and make a sound together and know your place, know when to drop out, know when it's your turn, when it goes sideways. As a bass player especially, you have a big power as a bass player. Also in classical music, in orchestra, when things go really wrong, you can say, here it is, and you can bring the band together again. So these things I learned from playing pop music, so it wasn't a waste of time at all.
You went to study at conservatory, but not only once, you went 3 times or 4 even. First time back in the day for double bass, then you went back for your masters, then you went back for Baroque music.
Yes.
You even got a PhD and wrote a book. Why actually did you want to go back that many times after actually already been graduated for 20-30 years?
Well, my first diploma was back then the highest diploma you could get, so I got that one. And then a few years later they changed the system to an international system. Back then we were in the French system, like Premier Prix, Diplôme Supérieur and this kind of stuff. And then afterwards they changed it to Bachelor, Master, etc. So I thought it was a good chance to test myself, because after a couple of years in the orchestra it was really hard work and we had really tough, especially opera, because opera can be very long. The longest opera I played was 6 hours long. It's very physically tiring and you don't always have the strength or the drive to practice much. You just try to get through the day and through the rehearsal and through the performance and you're dead, And I thought, well, it's a good chance. They changed the system to Master and Bachelor. Let's see if I'm still up to the level. And so I practiced a lot and I got my master's degree for the new diploma. And then so many years later again, I had a discussion with a Baroque player and I said something that a lot of classical musicians think. I said, well, if Johann Sebastian Bach had a Steinway grand piano, he would have thrown out his harpsichord, he would have played the piano. And the gentleman very politely but violently disagreed with me, and he explained a lot of the reasons why maybe that's not the case. So I thought maybe I'm just being stupid, like a lot of people and a lot of classical musicians who think they are sometimes, think they are superior, the highest level of music, the classical music. And everything that came before now was worse than now. We always get better and better and better and better. So that means that the musicians in the Baroque period must have played so much worse than we do now, which is absolutely not true. But this made me think that maybe I'm being the stupid guy here. So instead of having these stupid ideas about superiority, let's check it out. So I went back to conservatory to study ancient music, and I did everything, not just the bass, but all the harmony and music history and all the seminars, etc., the whole package. I think this was the most important period of music education in my life, because this opened my world in a tremendous way. It was just every day was like a discovery of something nobody ever told me before. To this day, I find this so important to go back, because what we often do as classical musicians, if we have to play a little bit older music, we come from here and we go back like this gradually. And actually what we have to do is jump back 300 or 400 years and then start
that way.
in the other direction. And then you see where it all comes from, what we're doing now, where it all comes from historically. And also musically, in classical music, I think, again, the most touching music for me is probably from the Baroque period. It's so overwhelmingly just, there are no words. Of course, there's always been great music, and there's even in contemporary music, there is some music that touches me, very little of it, but it happens. But from the rock period, there's so much music that is so intensely moving that I really need to go into that period. I used to have 12 basses. I'm down to 5 now because they had different tunings and different numbers of strings, and with frets and without frets, and gut strings. And so I had one bass for every for every niche, but I came down to 5 basses right now. Probably I'll end up with 1 or 2, but it was a very fascinating trip through history to discover all these things and to get a wider look on music and how music affects people, because in the end that's always the same thing, why are we playing music? Okay, we're playing for ourselves, but we play for an audience. It's like pop music, you play for people. If there's no audience, you're finished. So you have to move them, you have to give them something, and this I learned very much from playing baroque music and pop music.
How does it feel to be the second doctor in the family?
Well, yeah, that was one of my private ambitions to do this PhD, because my father, as a medical doctor, was always a bit sad that none of his 10 children became a doctor. And so I thought, this is my chance, And after my PhD defense, the jury came in to announce that I had my PhD, and I dedicated it to my father. Daddy, you have your doctor now. I'm sure it made him smile.
For sure. I'm hesitating if I should do a PhD. I want to be the third doctor. But Well, to me, you're one of the most rock and roll classical musicians I've ever met or known. Being very open-minded, trying non-conventional ways of playing or instruments, putting frets on your basses, even including one production at La Monnaie where you put a pickup on your bass and you put a little bass amp under under the chair, experimenting different ways of strings and tuning.
Oh yeah, it never ends.
Which actually inspired me a lot to try new things all the way.
That's why he has 200 guitars.
Not yet, going there. What haven't you tried yet that you still would want to try?
Oh, well, there were a lot of things, about 10 or 12 years ago, I was a little bit into Middle Eastern music, and I bought an oud.
I remember that,
yes. I remember that, yeah. But right at that moment, I was diagnosed with cancer, and so I had an operation, and after that, I had to give up a lot of those crazy dreams. So I sold the instrument because I didn't have the energy to follow that. But I was very interested back then to extend the horizon a bit, and then we played together a couple of times. I still played bass a little bit, did some gigs together. It was nice to play Dancing Queen and this kind of stuff on the bass guitar. But now it's with age, you have a little bit less energy, and I'm very lucky to be alive. So I have my bass, and I have a duo with my lovely wife who plays the viola d'amore. So we discover a repertoire with the duo. Some people write pieces for us, so we try to find pieces that have never been played before. So it still goes on, exploring still goes on, but in a different way.
But even on ukulele?
Oh yes, that's my second favorite instrument, which is a bit counterintuitive because it's very high.
Yes.
But it's so convenient, it's small, and it makes a happy sound. You just play the open strings and it brings a smile to your face. Yes. I needed that. Actually, your sister gave me the first ukulele when I was in hospital after the operation, and it cheered me up and it helped me get better. Thank you, Viola.
Yes, it would have been hard to have a double bass in the bed in the hospital.
That would have been impossible, but ukulele kind of put a smile back on my face after the horror. So ukulele and bass, I think that's my two main instruments.
Now we'll get a bit to me.
Yes,
okay, so,
at last.
Well, growing up, I always had, I think, of what I remember, a very big hunger for music. But when did you and Mom realize that I was that interested in music?
Oh, very early on. And actually, Viola was the first one to show a big interest in music, just like her grandmother. She was singing all day long, non-stop. And so we saw this kind of music germ in her and in you, because as soon as you saw a piano, you had to try and not just tapping like most kids to just tap on the piano, but trying to find things and exploring the whole keyboard. And so, from a very early age that you were both very into music. I don't remember when you got your first guitar, but it was very early on.
It was pretty early. I mean, I remember first actually an accordion.
Yeah, an accordion.
When I was 4 or 5 years old.
That's true. I don't know why.
Because I wanted.
I
remember that I went through a couple of periods. Like I wanted to be a conductor, so then I got some conductor.
That was the first thing. Yeah.
Conductor,
a baguette,
or however you call it in English. I even went to rehearsals, and I was sitting behind the orchestra.
You should know this. I was in the orchestra. The conductor is in front of me, and he's sitting behind the orchestra on a pedestal. I like this, right in line inside of the conductor, and the conductor is conducting us, and he is imitating the conductor behind our backs. The rehearsals, and the conductors were always very nice about it, because I realized it must be so disturbing to have this shadow conductor right in front of you. And for instance, Antonio Papano is a fantastic conductor. He's one of that's a whole other story. I can talk 5 hours about Antonio Papano, what a fantastic conductor he was, and how much I learned from him. And I saw him recently, and I asked him about it, and he was so good about it, about you conducting, and he complimented you.
I remember this. I don't remember what I did, but I remember him coming to me after the rehearsal, like not going straight to his like restroom, which they normally do. He would really come behind the orchestra, come to me, give me hands, like really thank you, because without you I couldn't have done it. I was watching you and mimicking you, and I was like, it really was. I don't remember how old I was, but very young.
4 or 5 or something. But these moments in a person's life are so important, because these moments are unforgettable. Like a conductor coming up to you and saying, thanks to you, I could do my job. This is like a motivation for the rest of your life. Right?
Sure.
Yeah, so you had this music, probably a little bit the same thing as me, being moved by music, and literally moved. Yeah, so I think it's always been like this for you too. Music comes very deep into your system. So there was no doubt about it. You had musical talent. So one day you had this accordion period, which didn't last very long. And then I think you went straight to guitar.
Guitar and drums at almost the same time, playing a pot set home.
Yes.
Before I got my drum set. About the conductor, there's a second time for a real concert with David Miller. Yeah. They were playing, and there's the encore, which we also have when we play pop music. They also sometimes have this with classical music, that people are like, and he has to go on stage, conductor. But the orchestra, they kept playing like the last piece of music. So I was sitting behind him on the first row. So he turns around, gives me his like stick, and he's like, "It's your turn now." So I was a bit older then, but I was doing, and he was just going on stage, and the orchestra was just playing perfectly without looking at me. I hope.
We didn't look too much, but it was fun. It was fun to see you conduct.
That was fun, yeah. I remember being quite a difficult kid for an extended period of time. But I do remember you telling me the sentence all over my life. I didn't really listen to it when you were saying it before, but saying like, if something bothers you, ask yourself a question. Can you change it yourself, this thing? Can you change it into something you like? If the answer is yes, just use the time to change it. If the answer is no, stop complaining, because complaining is just going to waste your time.
Yeah, that's true.
Just let it be. I don't think I understood it when I was a kid. Or maybe I wasn't listening, probably. It's funny, because the last 10 years I've put this more and more into my life, and actually I use this a lot. Where did you get this philosophy from?
I got a lot of these philosophical things from my father, who was a very, contradictory person. Very impulsive, very direct, always exaggerating things. But on the other hand, he had this insight that he saw what he was doing and he wanted to change it. So I had these philosophical themes like, if you can change it, change it. If you can't change it, just forget it. You're wasting your time. This came from The Good Soldier Schweig, the books by Hasek, made into a television series in Germany, I think. The Good Soldier Schweig is a very beautiful story about a soldier, a nobody in the army. And a lot of bad things happened to him, and his motto is always, alles hat seinen tieferen Sinn. Everything has its deeper meaning. And this is a lesson I got from my father, and which I really always took to heart. Maybe my brothers and sisters, I don't know how they, but for me it went very deep, because it means that if something bad happens to you, whatever it is, health-wise or whatever, and it's tough and it's really hard, and then you think one day this horrible thing will turn out to have been something positive actually in the end. Because of this and this and this happened, and the result is positive. So everything has a deeper meaning. So if something bad happens to you, don't despair. Maybe one day you will see that it wasn't that bad at all, or it was bad, but something good came out of it. So these things come mainly from my father, yes. And also I have to say, my mother was always a very optimistic, cheerful person. I'm lucky that I got her genes in this way, not her genes, but her genes.
I don't think she ever wore jeans.
No, she did.
Oh, she did.
Oh, yeah. So because the genetic component, we had a talk yesterday about nature versus nurture, which is an eternal subject. And so I feel lucky that I had the lessons from my father and, let's say, positive, optimistic genes from my mother. And I hope some of that has come to you.
I think in delay, but
a little bit delayed, yes, because as you say, you were a bit of a difficult kid to handle when you were smaller. But I see an evolution in the, like you said, last 10 years, and he's growing up. He's getting
finally. Finally.
He's getting there.
Finally. Still a long way to go, but
He's getting there.
my story with China.
Yeah.
Well, how did you feel or think when I came back the first time after playing there and telling you I was going to move to Shanghai?
Yeah, it didn't really surprise me all that much because I'd been in China and, well, you know, the family story. I was married to a Chinese lady, and so I'd been to China and I had seen Shanghai, and so it wasn't like you're going to the moon or something. So it was something that was a little bit familiar to me. I remember we had this discussion, you want to go back to China, and who's going to pay for the ticket? You know, you go work for the ticket, you know, and you did. You took a job, and in the end, I sold one guitar and my PRS.
I remember it.
I sold my PRS to pay for your ticket. But I appreciate the effort that you went out and got a job, pay for your ticket. So you were serious about it. I wanted to know if you're serious about it. If you're just going to waste my money and go to China. If you take a job in order to pay for your ticket, that meant that you're serious about it. So yeah, I support that. You always had my full support, that's for sure. And of course, as a parent, you're anxious. What's he going to do all alone in China? How's that going to go? But in the end, it turned out fine. You did a great job learning the languages, and finding your way.
But did you expect me to stay there and that I would build a career or whatever
No,
in music?
I didn't expect that. No, not at all. That was a big surprise that it got better and better, and that you found your way and your life and your friends, and so many things happened, you know. And then became a YouTuber and a musician and a session musician and an organizer, and all these hidden talents suddenly came out to bloom, and I think it's fantastic. I couldn't do it in a million years, but you did it.
Well, you don't know. Maybe.
I never tried.
I know you said so before, but briefly, that you studied linguistics at first.
Well, actually, Germanic languages, yes.
And you were always kind of interested in languages.
Oh, yeah.
And I am too. Do you think that comes from you? And also, does it help being a musician to learn languages or to be interested in it? Maybe does it connect at some point?
I don't know if there's any scientific proof of that, but I think having an ear certainly helps. Having an ear for intonation, especially in Chinese. You know.
Yeah, there's intonations.
When I tried to speak Chinese to my wife back then, and I learned something, I was very proud, and I said something in Chinese so she didn't understand. I said, no, there's a oh, sorry. So being musical probably helps, but talent for languages, I think it's also due to the fact that Belgium is a very tiny country, and we're surrounded by big cultures, France on the left, and England up to the north, and Germany. So we have these big languages, or these bigger cultures than ours. We've also been invaded throughout history by all kinds of countries, by Spain, and everybody came to fight our wars in Belgium. So we have a habit in Belgium of absorbing languages, especially in the northern part, the Flemish people. It's kind of second nature to us. If a tourist comes up to us and they try to speak, first reaction is, first, we already hear where they're from. And when we're polite, we say, where are you from? From Germany. So we switch to German. And that's how it happens. So France always speak French, English. So this is also something due to geography. On the other hand, there's probably some kind of predisposition for language. Some people have no difficulty in learning new languages, and some people can never learn to speak another language. So I think, it's a combination of both. You have the talent and the predisposition, and you come from this culture where many languages converge. And then you went to China, and in a matter of a year or so, you spoke perfect Chinese. I don't know, I can judge it. Pretty decent Chinese after a year already, which is amazing. And I'm very happy you did it when you were young, because I feel like when you get older, it gets a lot more difficult. I've studied Chinese for a bit. That's where you learn.
It's pretty good.
That's when you learn your first Chinese. You learn from me.
Yes.
I remember a Chinese guy asking your age.
Oh, but because when I was, I don't know, maybe
You
I
were
was
eight?
eight. Yes,
You
I
were
was
eight?
8. Around that period, my dad had learned me to count to 10 in Chinese. So that's the only thing I could basically do. But I had to count. So there was a Chinese friend of our family that came. He asked me, like, said, yeah, so how old are you? He asked me in French, I think, or English. And
So
I was like,
very quietly.
and then what happened? That was very, and he was like, surprised, like, oh, very good. That's true.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was a
So,
funny story.
At 8 years old, you could
I
already
could
count.
count until 10. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, that's nice. But it's good you did it when you were young, because, like I said, it gets harder as you get older. I'm trying to learn Japanese now, and I can manage more or less, but still have a long way to go.
You'll get there.
I'll get there when I'm 100. But yeah, so you speak English, French, Dutch, Mandarin, Chinese,
Yes.
and a little bit of Japanese.
Very little bit of Japanese, and I kind of can understand German, but I don't speak it.
Yeah.
I wish I could. So a few years ago, then, like you said, I decided to learn Shanghainese and even act now in Shanghainese plays. What do you think of that?
I just love it.
Do you think it fits me? And do you think I will continue on this path, or is this just another?
I don't know, it's for you to decide, but I think it's possible because it's a mixture of things. It's an attraction, I think, for Chinese people to see a foreigner act in a play in their dialect. So that's very attractive, be it in China or anywhere. If we see a Chinese guy
In West Flemish.
exactly playing a theater and using our dialect, would just be wow.
Yes, that's true.
So that's something, and that's something that will probably motivate you. I motivate organizers to engage you. I think you can do it because I saw some excerpts and I saw some bits and pieces of it, and it looked very convincing. So I don't know if you can go outside comical roles or more serious. I don't know if you are.
Well, it's I like this not because it's also because it's comical, but just because it's weird for me, because anything that's Shanghainese culture feels very familiar to me in some way. I don't know why. And the same with it, because these comedy things are actually very ancient in a way, Shanghainese. Like the young people don't really get this anymore.
Exactly.
But I get it. And these actors they're flabbergasted because each time I'm very fast and understand and I make the same kind of jokes that they would make 40 years ago. And then the young actors that are really in this company and that have studied and stuff, they're like, this is old shit, I know, and we're not interested in this, which is weird.
Because you're talking about old jokes. We have this kind of bad habit in the family, especially the boys, of telling granddad jokes. You know? We just laugh like crazy and nobody's laughing.
At least we laugh with ourselves, you know.
And I do hope to win sometime also the Lenny Prize.
En mooi is nu niet zo belangrijk voor een man. Een man kan interessant zijn, ook als hij niet mooi is. Maar voor een vrouw is het belangrijker om zo lang mogelijk mooi te blijven. En dat...
u zelf mooi?
Ik zelf nee, ik vind het afschuwelijk lelijk. Maar de meeste mensen zeggen dat ik een heel mooie jongen ben, maar ik kan het niet geloven.
Dat geloof ik. Dat het voor de mensen van de omgeving heel moeilijk is.
En wordt dat u soms niet kwalijk genomen door uw klanten bijvoorbeeld?
En want die smijt ik buiten.
So granddad jokes are a part of your DNA, I think. Very bad, silly jokes that nobody's laughing at.
Maybe.
But maybe there's a part there.
Maybe there is.
But also, I think the fact that you're a musician and you're used to being on stage and you're used to presenting yourself must be a great help in playing theater, because it's not something weird for you to be on stage. You're on stage all the time.
Yes, it's a different way of being on stage, but yes.
But this part is there, in front of an audience. You're not afraid of an audience. You can handle this. It's not like somebody who's never been on a stage in front of an audience just dies. It's natural. It's a kind of a natural environment for you, except you don't have your guitar, your drums. But the situation is comparable. So I think this is a great help for you in playing theater, and it looks very natural.
It feels also very natural, which is weird in a way. Because before they asked me, they were like, "Okay, we'll try and stuff." Rehearsals took a bit because it's a total new thing. Also, this kind of acting is a bit different than what people think, because it's not like a theater play or like TV show or a movie where you get your script, you learn your script, and you say your script. No, you get your script, and the first thing they say, don't learn the script. It's just the guideline.
But that's the same as in music.
We'll go into rehearsal and we rehearsed a full month, 8 hours a day. And if you now go back to the original script to now, nothing is the same. Exactly. Everything has changed, and still the script we have now is not the same we act each day. Because the actor in front of you, he knows what important message to get out there, but he's gonna do it totally different every day. So you have to be it's like improvisation a bit.
Exactly. But that's the essence of music too. That's what you do. You don't play the same solo every night. Depends what other people are doing, how you feel today, what's your mood, how's the audience reacting. It's different. It's very different. And actually the same for classical music. I won't go into that now because that's another lecture of 5 hours. But it's the same for classical music. You don't just play exactly what's written. That's the most stupid thing you can do.
Well, that's what a lot of people think, but I don't think that.
That's the beginning. It's the beginner level. Play what's written. From there on, you have to
find your own.
Do the same thing. Like in the theater, you have to. Music is something alive. It's not something dead. And the theater is the same thing. I'm very happy because we often go to the theater in Brussels, a French theater gallery, and it's the same thing. It's something that's alive. You know, people are laughing, and the actors are going to react to that. They're going to play differently. They're going to do something they didn't do yesterday. So that's the attraction of theater and of music. Unexpected.
Yeah, it's funny because it's a bit between stand-up comedy then is very interactive.
Yes.
Ours, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, because there's 3 people that come from the outside, not from this theater group. So me and this other guy, and the other guy would like to say, yeah, so can I direct something straight to someone in the audience? Or if somebody's, can I direct? No, this is forbidden.
This can't, you can't.
In our kind of theater play, like Huajishi it's called, it's not. You can make jokes and you can do different stuff, but it's still a play. You can't interact like you would do in stand-up comedy, because it's a different kind of, So it's fun for us because we learn while we're there. And at the start, both the group of theater and us or me, or whatever, we don't know each other very well. So it's like getting to know each other. They were prepared to like, just because they can't force us to rehearse a full month 8 hours a day because we're not part of their troupe.
But they were flexible enough to.
They were flexible enough at first to say like, okay, even if you just come 1 week, on the end we'll do the whole creating, and you'll just come and do your part, and that's it. But especially me, I was like, no, but I already firstly said I want to do this. I'm gonna put all my energy on this, and also it's good for me because the less I go, the less I can get better.
Of course.
Especially for something totally new to me. Looking back to it now, I really needed that because the first 2-3 weeks I wasn't comfortable and I wasn't very open, and I was still too conscious of myself being in that room with these people. Each time I had to act, it was like I was seeing me trying to act. But you have to be that person, not acting. You have to be that character.
At least for the time.
For the time you're on stage. Once you're off stage, it's done. You can be yourself again. And you've been in China and Shanghai a couple of times before.
Yeah, maybe 5 times.
What was your first impression?
The first impression was Shanghai is bigger than Belgium. I remember one of the first days, my wife said, we're going to visit my uncle. We'll take a taxi. And I said, taxi? We can just walk there. Because in Brussels you can go anywhere.
You don't take a taxi anywhere.
Just walk. And then we took a taxi, and it took 1 hour or 2 hours to get there by car.
And it's still Shanghai.
And it's still Shanghai. Yeah. So very big back then, which is about 25 years ago. I don't know how it is now. It was very strange in a way because you had on one hand very modern, more modern than in Europe, high-rise buildings and shopping malls and stuff. And on the other hand, still very old and poor. And you could go into one street and be confronted with old and decrepit buildings and poor people, and then the next street you're in a shopping mall, which is like, wow, never seen this before. I don't know how it is now. That was really fascinating for me because I gave some lessons at conservatory back then as a guest professor, and we went there by bicycle. So we crossed all these different neighborhoods, and it was on the one hand you had this ancient China with the little workshops. I remember a bike workshop opening up to the street. These things which are all really old and very charming and very fascinating, but then again you come to a huge building with lights, very advanced. This was one of my first impressions, the disparity or the difference between 2 parts of Chinese culture of Shanghai. But I have to go back to see how it's evolving.
Yes, I'll take you. There's a little connotation because you talked about the conservatory in Shanghai. I remember you telling me when you came back that the students there were they have a different mindset.
Oh yes.
Can you tell that story?
Oh, well, it was a big shock for me because first of all, the students in the Shanghai Conservatory in the bass class, they were mainly girls, first of all. They were playing on instruments which I found very hard to play, but they did it. And I thought, how can you play on this? How is this possible? You can't play on this. But they did it. And also the mindset. Of course, these students come probably from all over China, and they're the best and the best and the best of the best. I'm sure about that. But the mentality is so different. For instance, there was one student, and I gave him a piece to play to try to change his mind a bit and have a different repertoire. And I gave him a sonata which was in 3 or 4 movements. So I say, no, for next lesson, maybe you try the first movement and see how that goes. So next lesson was, I don't know, in a couple of days or next week, I don't know. So the next day I'm there, and the student comes with this sonata. And overnight he has studied the whole piece, not just the one movement that I asked, but the whole thing he has studied, and he can play it. And he played through the whole sonata. It wasn't perfect, but I can't imagine happening that.
Impossible.
Of course, I don't need to make a caricature of this, but very often if you ask this kind of thing in Belgium, very often it's going to be like, well, I didn't have time, I only have half a movement. Of course, there are students who are really serious, more and more, because the competition is so huge. And there's a lot of students who really do the work that you gave them to do. But this was so amazing back then for me that this guy, I think it was a boy, he came with the entire sonata, and I said, when did you do that? I practiced all night. So this is a kind of, that was a big surprise for me, that this kind of dedication of what is it, or is it stress, or is it competition, or it's a mixture of
It's a mixture of things. It's a mixture of a lot of people, a lot of competition. So you have to be the best of the best, and you have to be, it's in their culture. Since they're kids, you have to be, always. And up until today, it's like this. They're now even having a special word for it in Chinese for this kind of thing, which is called 卷, which actually means like you have to be better than somebody else. You have to work harder than somebody else. It's there, man. Which has good sides and bad sides.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. I was astonished. On the other hand, you start thinking, how healthy is this? Is there a middle ground? Is there some middle way between this extreme stress and the laid back that we have in Europe sometimes? There must be some healthy middle ground between those. But anyway, it was absolutely astounding to see that. And the eagerness of all of those students, it was good for my ego, I have to say, because they look up to you and and you feel a responsibility. You have to give them something because they're expecting something from you. You can't just wing it, you can't just, maybe, no, you have to really, they take it seriously. So as a teacher, you want to take it seriously as well, which is good for both parties because it made me think, and all these little things made me into what I am now because I have these experiences and these expectations of people, and you can't be selfish, you have these students, for them, it's really important for their lives, what you tell them, what you don't tell them, how you treat them, how you inspire them. This is really, really important. It was a humbling experience to see this seriousness of the students and how they want to get there, how they want to learn, how they're really ambitious and serious about it. So I found that really inspiring for myself to see that.
But back then you were already teaching in Brussels?
No,
not yet.
I was teaching in music school, but Brussels was later.
The last one. Any advice for me going on from here on? Anything you want to say? Not necessarily advice.
I would say, first of all, stay healthy, because if that doesn't work, nothing works. So sometimes I'm a little bit worried you push it a little bit too hard, but that's what parents do. Parents worry.
You worry. It runs in the family, pushing things hard.
That's true. It's also an idea, pushing things too hard, but just be careful. Be careful. Don't push it too hard, but not too much too hard. And then just continue what you're doing. Enjoy what you're doing. Never forget that as a musician or as a theater or as a person, you're not just doing things for yourself, but you're doing things for other people. And if everybody tries to have this mindset of doing things for the common good, for the next, for your neighbor, for your friends, for people around you, I think the world will be better. So I think you just continue doing what you're doing and making people happy through music and through theater and through making hopefully interesting videos to make the world better in a limited way.
And everyone should do it in the proportion they can do it for themselves,
And you just continue doing that, and I think that's a very simple advice, but I think that's more than enough.
Good. Okay, now let's go play some guitar.
I'm not playing.
What was your first serious Fender?
Music Master bass.
Serious, I'm talking.
It was a serious bass, a very good bass. I opened it up once and I was surprised to find a guitar pickup underneath the cover.
That's what I mean, serious. After that was precision.
It was jazz bass.
Jazz bass.
White one. And then another jazz bass, and then a couple of Rickenbackers and a couple of Music Mans and a Gibson fretless, and I don't remember too many.
What do you think has changed since back then? When you walk here, all these different models?
They're all the same, except this one.
They're all the same, but they didn't have all these different...
You had one Stratocaster and one Tele, two Teles. You had one jazz bass and you had one precision. Now you have 200 different precisions.
Yeah, signatures as well.
And before people did that themselves, I did that too.
You tried that?
I tried it, yeah. I ruined a couple of nice guitars, I have to say.
Should have kept them. They would have been worth a lot of money.
Worth a lot of money now, but now they're worthless because I ruined them.
No, even while ruined, they're still worth.
I don't think so. You haven't
because
seen
it's been done by you.
You haven't seen them. I tried to put in different pickups, and I took my mother's drill and I drilled the holes way too big. Then I had to have a new scratch plate made by someone to cover all the holes that I made in the body.
Should have become a luthier.
Yeah, no talent.
A mischance.
I took out the frets of a maple neck jazz bass, and then it went like this. Very stupid.
Nice. How about you play something?
No, thanks. That was a long time ago.
I found your amp, Bassman.
No, not this one.
No, it doesn't exist anymore. If you just choose one thing in the room.
The little one there.
Oh, the Champ.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
I don't want stuff that takes up a lot of space. Just the little Champ would be nice.
You had that before?
I had a couple of them.
Dat is een Japaner, ja. Ah, ja.
En die is zo cool, maar die past